So while America is seemingly celebrating racism, Africa is celebrating its unity with the celebration of Africa Day this week, Thursday, the 25th of May. The US is going backwards. And in this video, I'm going to give you the honest review of whether life is better in the USA or in Africa. If you don't know me, my name is Ashley. On my channel, Ashley in Africa, I speak about my experience of living, moving, and doing business here on the continent of Africa. I live in Johannesburg, South Africa, my second country here on the continent. And I'm also the founder of a fantastic community of entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and investors who are investing in projects here on the continent and building their businesses here on the continent. The saying is, if you don't have an Africa plan, you don't have a growth plan. And with Africa being the most powerful continent of the 22nd century, you can't afford to miss out. So I'm so grateful to have built this community of investors and entrepreneurs that are getting in while they can. So welcome to the channel if you're new, and if you're not new, welcome back. Be sure to like this video, share it with someone who would find value in it, and subscribe to the channel. So yeah, as I mentioned, this 25th of May is the 60th celebration of the Africa Day. It is an annual commemoration of the foundation of the Organization of Africa Unity, the Africa Union, and it's so exciting to be here on the continent again celebrating our third Africa Day. Yeah, going into our third year, there's just so much to be grateful for. And I really just want to give my perspective on whether life is better in Africa or in the US. And I know a lot of our diasporans know what's up, and a lot of our continental Africans will also want to know. And so I'm going to give you my honest review. All right. And so, as I mentioned, there's a lot going on in America. There always is. But, while the US seems to be going backwards and trying to repeal things and erase things, Africa is on the incline. It is moving forward. And so it's lovely to see that. But I'm going to break this down into a few specific areas that I can measure qualitatively and quantitatively, basically meaning like with data and also just with like my experience. All right. So I've got notes and I'm gonna make sure that I dive in so I don't forget anything and don't leave anything out for you. So again, be sure to like this video and comment below if this content is resonating with you. All right. So one of the first reasons why people consider moving anywhere is culture. All right. And so we're going to talk about the US first. We're going to go into what is going on in America and the things that people are technically looking at when they decide to migrate to a place. So the culture, well, American culture through my lens is a culture that is based in consumerism, right? The culture of opulence, style, swag, all that, right? And when you're looking at kind of what that culture has been built around, a lot of us as Black Americans like to think that we've created the culture, right, of America. But that culture is and pretty much has been to our demise, if we're being honest. And so the current state of the culture in the US is divisive. It's about separation. It's about creating these pockets of people that are able to only relate to each other and exist in that bubble of each other, right? And so, Black Americans are really separated from Asian Americans, which policy is being created around, white Americans, white women, white men, indigenous. It's like a very divisive, separative culture. And that's just what it is. It's the current state of the culture of the US. The next thing is career, right? So the economic job reports have been looking good. There have supposedly been jobs created, and these jobs, seem to be for infrastructure development, but not necessarily for all industries, right? So we've seen a lot of big tech companies laying off people. These mid-level jobs seem to be going away and not coming back. And so people in the US are really terrified of this AI technology because critical thinking is not really a common sense, a common skill set for most Americans, right? So that critical thinking set that AI is able to replace, that research ability that AI is now able to replace is, you know, essentially taking some jobs away, the ability to research, to be objective, to be aware of geopolitics and, you know, other things outside of like basic information, you know, seem to be an American problem that isn't getting better. Right. And so while I do know that there are a lot of continental Africans, our brothers and sisters on the continent, that want to migrate to the US, you're looking at an opportunity to work in jobs that may or may not actually be available for you. A lot of these mid-level jobs, which a lot of educated, highly educated Africans are looking at taking, are going away. Now, this is not in all sectors, of course. Doctors, I think truck driving. You know, there are certain careers and industries that are honestly attracting our Africans to the US. And while these jobs are readily available, you know, some of them are definitely going away. And I don't think with the technology around self-driving vehicles really progressing, I'm not sure that truck driving is going to be there for, you know, the next 10 years. Let's just say that, right? So weather. The US has been, you know, experiencing serious unpredictable weather, from tornadoes to hurricanes to blizzards to floods. I mean, it's been a lot. And I haven't been there in like 3 years, so I can't really speak on this outside of what I've been getting on the news. But it seems like the weather is really unpredictable, and obviously, oh yeah, uh, wildfires, right? Like all of these things are happening, and it's an unpredictable nature. Is global warming essentially an issue globally? Absolutely. But it seems like the US is getting the brunt of that. And, you know, I think I just saw an article the other day, actually today or yesterday, about, you know, the fact that the New York is sinking because of the 7.5 trillion tons of weight that is on that island. And so, yeah, it's actually sinking. And no wonder this last season of rain, you had the subways flooded, and tornadoes are a really big issue. Hurricanes are a really big issue, not tornadoes. Hurricanes are a really big issue, you know, in New York. So the weather is a lot, you know. Food. Now, can you get whatever you want to eat in America? Yeah, you can, but you know, at what cost? I mean, the food in America is, you know, globally known as unsafe, globally known as unhealthy, globally known to be one of the reasons why America is one of the most medicated, actually the most medicated country in the world. And so, yeah, is there great food? Absolutely. Are we the most medicated people in the world? Absolutely. So there's that development. So, you know, there is deteriorating infrastructure, right? These aren't the things that you're going to see on TV, on the movies, on the reality shows, you know, the deteriorating infrastructure, bridges collapsing, potholes everywhere, power grids failing, the water systems being poisoned all around the country. You know, infrastructure has been and is deteriorating at a massive rate. And, you know, while there seems to be some funding for these initiatives, it doesn't seem like these things are getting better. Water piping, water systems. I mean, you know, it goes on and on, right? I remember seeing some videos from my former hometown in Atlanta, where during the winter pipes were bursting everywhere, big apartment buildings, just a serious infrastructure issue that's happening in the US. And that type of trade, those type of experts are becoming few and few. Thus, the migration of contractors and people that are able to do that work are being attracted and courted to come to the US. The next thing, cost of living. Rising cost of rent and food is a real deal, a real issue in the US. Rents are up 20%, food is up 25 to 50% in some places. Utilities are skyrocketing. When I was living in America, my monthly expenses were about $10,000 a month. Now I'm spending half of that. And living what I feel like is a better quality of life. Going into the next aspect, the quality of life in the US is expensive. You have to be trading your time for money in order to live a life of any sort, because I'm not even sure if a life of ease in America is really, really possible. I don't know. The people that I know that live this way aren't necessarily in the US anymore. So that level of just peace and ease, that exists, but it doesn't necessarily exist in the US. I'm not sure that it does. Transportation. Well, yes, there are many different types of transportation, a ton of different options. Depending on where you live, there are public options available to you. Most of the major US cities don't necessarily have great public transportation, but you do have some places like Chicago, Illinois, New York, New York, maybe even Washington, D.C., and there are a few other metros, but big cities like LA, Atlanta, Miami, Florida, like public transportation is really not the best. Most people will have a car. Most people will own a car. And with the focus of going electric and low emissions, cars are getting more expensive. And we've been seeing that over the last couple of years. Crime. Well, the crime in America is at an all-time high. I mean, mass shootings are at record numbers and don't seem to be going down anytime soon with the absence of like a proper gun legislation. So homicides are up, domestic violence is up. I mean, the crime is just out of control. Kidnappings, people are going missing, and it's just really unfortunate, but it is something that I personally, it was one of the biggest red flags for me, as a person who studied economic development and, also had two girls. And as a woman, I just felt like it wasn't a place that I could raise my children safely. And I'm sure if you're a mom, if you're a woman, or even if you're a man, a family man, a father, like you have this experience. And it's a big reason for a lot of the anxiety that's caused, a lot of the mental health issues that are caused and that exist in the US, right? Healthcare, healthcare is said to be one of the best. The US healthcare system is said to be one of the best in the world. Again, I'm not really sure, right? I'd say that having been outside of the continent of America and not having really any major health issues, I have had health care in Africa, and it's been better from a standard of attentiveness, better from a sense of affordability, but there are certain things, of course, that I feel like, I had a beautiful experience with my daughter when she was born as a child she had like an intestine issue. And so we were in the NICU for 30 days. And I will say that I had a beautiful experience, as beautiful as it could have been in the NICU. There were some things, of course, hiccups, but I did feel like she got the best care. And I know that NICU that hospital, that children's hospital, was one of the best in the US. So, I will give healthcare to the US. However, I'll also have to say that it's maybe a tie because, there's places where you go to the doctor here, and I feel like all of my friends and family have had this experience. They go to the doctor, they see a doctor, they get care, it's affordable. And then they get followed up by the doctor or the doctor's assistant or nurse like the next day or 2 days to check and see how they're doing. That's never once happened in the US. And so that alone, I mean, you could go bankrupt in the US for healthcare. Um, are there things that can be expensive here on the continent? Absolutely, but you're not. It isn't a situation where people are going bankrupt on a regular, or putting GoFundmes out there for basic hospital visits, right? Or even really important hospital stays. Um, medical insurance is really, really affordable. And it's a situation where if you have medical insurance, oftentimes you don't have a thing as, a deductible, like where you've got to spend so much money before you can actually get it kicked in. I mean, those things are very Western and they don't necessarily exist here on the continent. Education. Well, the education in America is seemingly declining as they erase Black history and American history from the textbooks, right? So the university systems aren't what they used to be. Our biggest innovators aren't even graduating from our universities anymore. Most children are in the K through 12 public school system won't be prepared to attend top 20 institutions. So, there isn't, I don't feel like this wide, um, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of attention paid to globalization, right? Like, or the fact that American students need to compete with the rest of the world. Critical thinking and problem solving are not necessarily core curriculums until later on in education, like high school. Meanwhile, this is being taught in kindergarten, first grade level classes, preschool here, on the continent. So America is a great country. I just don't want to live there. I'm going to jump now into life in Africa and why I personally feel like life is better here on the continent. If this is helpful and if this is resonating, be sure to like this video and share it with someone who would find value in it as well. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. We've got so many people that are enjoying this content that seemingly are not subscribed to the channel. So go ahead and subscribe and join the family. All right, so Africa culture, one of the oldest continents on the earth, right? Our people come from here. This is the cradle of humankind. This is where the original man came from. So you have some of the oldest tribes still practicing their traditions, speaking their language, practicing their spirituality, consuming their food, speaking their native tongue, living in community around the Maasai tribe in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam, living around people of the Zulu tribe, the Itswana tribe, the Xhosa tribe, Setswana, yes, and like others. You really have just an admiration for what culture really is, and we understand, now I understand why Africans say, not all, right? But some will say, yeah, as an American, African American, you don't have culture because we don't have our own language. We don't know where we come from. We don't know where we originate from. And being in community with people that do know these things, it makes sense. It makes sense. Careers here, well, Africa is for the problem solvers. Africa is for the people that are entrepreneurs, that are going to build and create the solutions of the next century. Are there jobs? Yes. But are they the jobs that are leading in the next generation of thinking, the next generation of architecture, manufacturing, water supply, energy, right? Mining. Like, this is a market where your critical thinking, your problem solving skill sets will be extremely valuable. So it is not a place to come and look for a job. In fact, it is a place to create jobs and solve problems and build businesses. So I advocate for that, obviously, through the Afrika Investors Academy. And, we support each other in the solutions that we're solving, as well as ideating around different ways to create different solutions and support people to be able to build those solution driving technologies and efficiencies into their business. So if you have an interest in learning more, please visit the link below. The continent has all different types of weather. I'll say that being in South Africa right now, it's cold. And I have seen how global warming is impacting, the continent. Actually flying over Kenya to Tanzania during our holiday, we passed the top of Kilimanjaro, Mount Kilimanjaro, and at the time there was no snow on the mountain. And I remember flying on the way there and hearing the other people on the plane, like really in awe, kind of shocked. I wasn't on that side of the plane, but on the return flight, I remember being on that side of the plane and I realized, wow, yeah, this is really a problem. And so, the continent is seeing the effects. However, I'll say that there are parts of this continent that are so blessed that it's not this devastating type of weather systems that we're seeing in America back to back to back. Now, yes, the beautiful city of Durban had extreme flooding last year, and it was detrimental to a huge population. Parts of Nigeria, parts of West Africa saw really bad weather. And I'll say that I haven't experienced it being in East Africa for the last, 2 years. I experienced at the worst rainy season, really, really hot weather and rain. And so there seems to be something with the underdevelopment, with the fact that people are still very much consuming from nature, that everybody doesn't have a car. People are very much walking and using various forms of transportation, that these things feel unaffected, right? But again, I can only speak for the places in which I visited, which are only 5 countries on the continent, not all, but it seems that the weather is pretty consistent, outside of the places that I've mentioned. Food. So in Africa, you can still get fresh food, fresh fruits, vegetables, free of GMOs, free of parasites, free of the things that are pretty much guaranteed to be found in food in the West, from grains, nuts, unbleached rice. I remember getting my rice from the rice fields of Tanzania, Mbeya, right? I think that's where rice is grown. Fish from the ocean, getting it delivered to me once a week. Fresh goats, beef that's slaughtered and delivered to you like in the same country, in less than a day, 24 hours, 48 hours. Bread basket, it's a bread basket. It's the bread basket really of the earth. And it is absent of illegal substances that are available in the US. Now, are there some places, like I know in South Africa, there are GMOs that have been introduced in certain places, and there are GMOs that have been introduced in multiple parts of the continent. There are companies here that are setting up and, figuring out what's what, because food security is our next biggest concern, as America is starting to see very visually. And so how Africa can be a solution to that issue, you've got a lot of these major corporations that are here on the continent looking to see what they can learn and how they can maybe not repeat what has happened in the US. So The food here is amazing. You feel better when you eat it. Essentially, anytime I'm not feeling well, I immediately look at my diet. I immediately, implement more citrus into my diet, more herbs into my diet, more green vegetables, and, you know, we're feeling great. We're actually doing that now. So, the development is probably next thing. I mean, development, it varies. So, depending on where you are, where in the continent, it's either pretty developed or has a huge opportunity. Here in South Africa, the most developed country on the continent, there is still very much an open market around the need for development, construction, infrastructure, you know, alternative power, water, like these opportunities for development are still very much available. While there is a foundation that has been set, there are still opportunities. And then as you go into different parts of the continent that are less developed, there are still opportunities that are available there as well. So that varies, but you don't have, this huge deterioration of infrastructure. Next thing, the cost of living. Well, depending on your income, depending on where you sit in, your income, if you're an entrepreneur and you're making 50,000 USD or more a year, you essentially can have a pretty decent cost of living in most places on the continent. Now, there are some cities, some countries that are a bit more expensive than others. These cities include maybe Accra, Ghana, Nairobi, Kenya, Cape Town, South Africa, Lagos, Nigeria. These places are going to be a bit more expensive, but other cities, other countries outside of that, you're going to have a pretty decent quality of life if you're earning at least 50,000 USD. And if you're earning more than that, your cost of living is going to be even better, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. And as I mentioned, I was spending $10,000 a month in the US, and I lived comfortably, but I didn't live comfortably enough to take month vacations or not work 50 hours a week. Um, yeah, so making less than that and spending half of that, being able to live a great, practically better quality of life is something I'm really, really grateful for. All right, the next thing, quality of life. I may have interchanged them, and so if I did, just give me some grace with that. Quality of life, it's a family-centered quality of life. There is a balanced lifestyle. So the idea of taking holiday is consistent. Everyone takes holiday. National holidays are for everyone to participate in. Spending time with family and friends is a must. It is a value of the culture here. And, being able to have support as a mother is a given, right? It is not a luxury. It is something that most mothers are afforded, like the majority. You are not expected to do child rearing alone. And so that concept of mom guilt or, just being in my corner crying because I'm so overwhelmed with motherhood, like I'm so grateful I don't have that anymore because I have a community of people that are committed to the rearing of my daughters. And that's the most important part for me of the quality of life that I experience here on the continent. The next thing is transportation. And so depending on where you are, there aren't many options. So being here in South Africa, there aren't many options unless you have a car. You gotta have a car. There are taxis as a public form of transport, but that's pretty much it. There seems to be the GO train that goes from Pretoria to Johannesburg, but if you don't live in one and commute to the other, you're not really using that form of public transportation. So I Uber everywhere, and it's available, it's accessible, it's affordable for me. But in other parts of the continent, there seems to be always an option for ride sharing. And I remember being in Tanzania, there were several options of transport: the bajajis, the bodabodas, the daladalas. And then if you're in Dar, there are public buses and public transportation that is seen as one of the most advanced on the continent. So there aren't many options, but there are. Again, it depends on where you are. But if you are working and you are traveling to work, then, you know, Uber is great. If you're working and you're working from home, which I am, I don't necessarily see the need for a car just yet. I do most of our transport through Uber, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. And I don't have any gas costs. I don't have to pull up to get petrol. I don't have any maintenance, and I don't have to worry about getting groceries in and out of my car by myself. Uber drivers are great for that. The next thing is crime. Well, crime is everywhere, but to what level? I will say that there is nothing like American crime. So the crimes that I've experienced here on the continent have been petty crime. And I'm saying I've experienced through people that I know, but me having experiences with crime, I've been thankful to be protected and covered, that I haven't had these experiences. But for the most part, people talk about petty crime as an issue, getting your phone snatched, or, you know, that's about it. There have, again, I don't know anybody personally that has been robbed or burglarized, and I'm grateful for that. But in comparison to the Western parts of the world where you have this increase in homicide, like, and trafficking, and home invasions, like, it's just not that type of crime. I feel very secure. I feel very safe. I've never felt safer. I walk around my neighborhood. I walk, with my girls. And so I feel really, really safe. I don't have these issues concerning the crime that I experienced in the US, which was a lot. Yeah, which was a lot, but that's in the past and I release it. And the next thing is healthcare. So I will say that the continent, as a place of young talent, has very innovative healthcare and affordable. So as I mentioned, the attentiveness to care is exceptional. Everyone that I know that has ever had a hospital experience or been hospitalized as an American cannot speak more openly and honestly and grateful around their hospital experience. Now, these are the folks that I know and the communities that I'm in, but for people and Americans that are used to spending thousands of dollars for basic care, if you can spend $100 or a couple $100 for care, you are going to get the best care possible. And it's innovative. And so the things that are happening here on the continent are not happening anywhere else in the world. And that type of experience is something that is just priceless. The last but not least, one of the most important things is education. So the education here on the continent is globally competitive. My daughter at the age of 2 was enrolled in school, learning how to write, learning how to read, learning body parts. Now at 4, she's speaking multiple languages. She is singing in multiple languages, and she's also learning through play learning, right? My oldest daughter is learning at an accelerated rate too, learning about global and geopolitical issues. She is speaking multiple languages. She is also involved in extracurricular activities that are global sports, swimming, rowing, tennis, netball. Like, these are things that connect the world and that these girls are experiencing. Also working at a research institution here on the continent, where I see wow, the type of education that their college level students are getting, the international business programs that exist here are so globally competitive that I just don't think they know how powerful they're setting themselves up for building what is and what will be the most powerful continent of the 22nd century. So these are my thoughts around whether life is better in the US or on the continent of Africa. And if you can't tell, I pick the continent of Africa. And, this was a very thorough kind of comparison with my honest opinion and my honest review. But this is truly how I feel. As I mentioned, the US, it's a great country. I just don't want to live there. And I'm grateful that I don't have to as an American citizen. And so if you have an interest in moving abroad or doing business on the continent of Africa, I'd love to work with you. You can connect with me, book a consultation, book a call, and I'd love to work with you one-on-one. I'll leave the link below. Until the next video, I'll see you soon.